Hello, the Inspectorate of Probation have just announced that they carried out an inspection of Nottinghamshire Probation Services in March 2025, and they said that they rate the services as being inadequate, and they raise all sorts of concerns, notably about public protection issues. They say that the services are woefully under-resourced and overstretched, and sickness and the like. So it's the first inspection that Nottingham should have had since 2021, and the inspectors said they have serious concerns about the quality of work to keep people safe, with insufficient focus upon public protection. They said that the mechanisms in place for sharing information with the police and the children's services were too often wholly ineffective. The report said that there were failures to identify potential children at risk, and that practitioners did not seek out information from the necessary local authorities. On one occasion, a practitioner made safeguarding inquiries in relation to a 31-year-old father who had received a suspended sentence for drug-related offences, but a response was not received for 3 months, during which time the man's contact with his child was not clearly assessed. So they've made a number of recommendations to improve the services, and concern has been said that workloads are unmanageable, with staff covering for sickness and vacant posts. The inspectors said that there's a staff shortage. Now, I've got a number of comments I want to make. Firstly, why are there shortages? And I would say it's the way that the probation services have been run by the Home Office and various governments, irrespective of which party. I would give them 2 out of 10, a score of 2 out of 10 for the way they've managed the probation services over the last 20 or 30 years. The way the government have managed the probation service has been woefully inadequate. And because of their mishandling of the probation service, a number of hugely dedicated and highly professional workers, probation officers, have left the probation service. Why? Because they've been mismanaged and let down. The other point is that these all very well them carrying out these inspections, but who are these inspectors? Now, in the 1990s, I was in a probation area where we had an inspection carried out, and they again said that we weren't carrying out thorough risk assessments. But we weren't able to, because the information that we were being given was terrible. Huge numbers of records of previous convictions that were supplied to us by the police and the Crown Prosecution Service were woefully inaccurate, with huge omissions in them. How on earth are you expected to carry out a risk assessment with such terrible information? And how can you blame a probation officer for that? I'm feeling angry about this. Far too little focus is carried out on good work that the probation do in rehabilitating offenders and putting them in the right direction. Far too little focus on that. And this insistent focus on public protection and form filling is very concerning. Now, in my opinion, the issue of public protection is a multi-agency requirement, and information needs to be shared freely and promptly between agencies. Is it the fault of this poor probation officer that the inspector said that he waited for 3 months to get a reply from the local social services. No, it's the social services failure to react promptly. Now, in my opinion, it's no good continuing to lambast the probation service like this, because morale will carry on falling. What they need to do is a multi-agency inspection of all the different agencies on risk and risk management, because you've got a multi-agency risk panel and they need to monitor the communication that's going on between the different agencies. Because as what was happening in the 1990s, clearly it was unacceptable that high numbers of the records of previous convictions that were inaccurate, none of the inspectors picked up on this. But this was an elementary fault that was occurring. And how on earth was I supposed to do proper inspections, and assessments without this vital information? When court reports are requested, there's supposed to be a full package of advanced disclosure, but often this doesn't arrive, or it's very poor and poor standard. Again, how do you expect quality work? So it is a shared responsibility, this public protection, between the police, probation, the prison services, mental health services, social services, schools, and all these people. Why not do a thematic inspection on all these different authorities? Don't just blame the probation service for this. Praise them up for the good work that they do in dealing with sex offenders and rehabilitating offenders. So that's another point. The other point is resources for accommodation have fallen dramatically over the years. Back in the 1980s, it was possible to accommodate somebody coming out of prison, but now they are coming out homeless. Now, an offender coming out homeless out of prison is at a very high risk of reoffending. And if they're a risky offender, they are at very high risk of committing a risky offence. Now, what is the probation service officer, what is a probation officer supposed to do about that? What can they do? You can't expect the probation officers to do this work with one hand tied behind their backs. They haven't got magic wands to provide lots of accommodation. They are dependent on the other agencies to provide the information. You can't expect an overworked probation service to go chasing after the information all the time, because I remember what that was like. I used to have to do it as a probation officer. But the way the probation service has been managed has been neglectful by the Home Officers and the various political parties for years. And they've been trodden on and they've been scapegoated. And, a lot of really good work has been done, and thanks should be done to that. But because they've been overworked, under-resourced and blamed, you've got high staff turnover. Because Grayling put in those most awful reforms and tried to privatise parts of the probation service, it caused masses of very good probation officers to leave the probation service. And because of that, they're not able to do their job fully and properly as the inspectors require. But who's to blame for that? Is it the probation officers? No. It's those in charge. Grayling's reforms were a disaster, an absolute disaster. So, please highlight the positive outcomes of probation. Please focus more on rehabilitating the offender. Please focus on giving more resources to probation, not only in staff, but accommodation and other things, and then we can get somewhere. But also, let's focus as a nation on how our children are growing up, because very high numbers of children who drop out of school, children who are autistic or ADHD or have trouble or are taken into care, very high numbers of these children end up becoming offenders. Let's look at that as a nation, rather than going on and on about, oh, public protection and this and that. Let's look at the root causes of crime as well. That will reduce crime in the long run, helping these people. But as a society, it's awful, but we as a society, I'm pretty certain of this, is the government and the authorities have no idea how many children are not attending school at the moment. Now that is dreadful, because those children are at very high risk of becoming offenders, you know? So that's my plea for today. Do a thematic inspection on probation and measure their work on how they're coping on rehabilitating offenders. If you want to do a public protection inspection, let's do a thematic inspection across all the agencies. Do a multi-agency inspection, because it is a multi-agency responsibility, not purely the responsibility of the Probation Service. Thank you for looking in, and do check out my other videos. All the very best now. Bye-bye.